Hey y'all, welcome to Redeem Girl Journey, and this week's Bible study is gonna be from the book of Genesis. Let's get started with the story of Joseph. I'm just gonna do a brief recap. So who is Joseph? So Joseph is the great grandchild of Abraham. All right, so Joseph's father was Israel and his mother was Rachel. Joseph was favored by his father Israel, and his other brothers did not like it. So what ends up happening at 17 years old, Joseph has this dream. And he has this dream that his family would bow to him. So he goes on and he tells his brothers that, hey, I had this dream. And this dream says that y'all are going to bow to me. And they got mad. Because number one, they already hated him because they know that their father favored him. Their father also gave him like this coat, and they were jealous because they didn't get a coat. So when Joseph came to them telling them that they were going to bow to him, oh, they had it out for him. So let's pick up at Genesis 37, verse 18. It says, now when they saw him afar off, and even before he came near them, they conspired against him to kill him. Then they said to one another, look, this dreamer is coming. Come therefore, let us now kill him and cast him into the pit. And we shall say some wild beast has devoured him. We shall see what will become of his dreams. So you see how they was really just hating on Joseph because he had a dream. And they even wanted to kill him to try to stop the dream from happening. But God had a little ram in the bush of one of his brothers that was like, wait, we ain't got to kill him. We ain't got to kill him. Let's just throw him in this pit or whatever. And, let's just sell him. Let's just sell him to slavery. We don't have to kill him. And I believe that was the mercy of God saying like, I had already spoke something and it's going to come to plan. So y'all trying to abort this mission? Oh, it's not going to happen. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. So what happened was that Joseph ended up being sold to slavery. Let's take this down to Genesis 39, verse 2. So it says that the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all he did to prosper in his hand. So Joseph found favor in his sight and served him. Then he made him overseer of his house. So look how it even started to turn around right then and there. So his brothers sold him into slavery. He then gets at this old fisher's house, and then he's even favored then. He's even given a position of authority even there. So let's finish with the text. So what ends up happening at Potiphar's house, it says that Joseph was an attractive man. So Potiphar's wife then wants to sleep with Joseph, but Joseph is like, girl, bye. We're not doing that, right? And she gets mad. She throws himself on it. And he was like, I'm not doing that. So basically, she ends up trying to frame Joseph and trying to say that Joseph tried to be with her. So what ended up happening? Joseph ends up getting sent to prison. The favor did not stop there. Even in prison, the scripture says that Joseph had favor. So in Genesis 39 and 21, it says, but the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy, and he gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. So even in prison, the Lord was still with Joseph. Now, what ended up happening in chapter 40 is some of Pharaoh's officers, they were also in prison. So they're in there talking about their dreams. Joseph's like, let me know. So Joseph was able to interpret the dreams. Now, one of the things that stood out to me was in chapter 40, verse 14. It says, but remember me when it is well with you. Please show kindness to me. Make mention of me to Pharaoh and get me out of this house. So Joseph was saying, hey, when you get up out of here, let Pharaoh know that I was able to interpret both of y'all dreams. And get me up out of here because I am in here unfairly. He was talking about that he was stolen from his land and that he did not do anything. Let's go down to verse 22. It said, yet the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. So one of the officers, they ended up getting out and they did not remember Joseph. And what came to my mind was that it wasn't time. It was God's timing. Like, I believe that the Lord allowed him not to remember Joseph at that moment because not time for Joseph to be removed. Now, let's go down to chapter 41. So what happens in chapter 41 is Pharaoh ends up having these dreams, and he's trying to reach out to everybody to interpret these dreams. And then one of the officers that was in prison remembered Joseph. Y'all, that was 2 years later. So that just showed me how divine God is. How that he didn't need, or it wasn't time for him to be remembered 2 years prior. But 2 years later, that same officer that didn't remember Joseph remembered him in that moment. And he was like, man, it's this man we met in prison, and he was able to interpret our dreams. So what did they do? Pharaoh sent for Joseph. Joseph was able to interpret the dreams for Pharaoh. And Pharaoh ends up making him ruler of Egypt. So you like, wow, redemption story, right? Now, the story is about to get even better. So there ends up being a famine in the land. So remember, in Egypt, Joseph is over all of Egypt. So then his brothers come into the picture. Scripture even talks about in chapter 42 how that when Joseph saw his brother, he said that he acted roughly to them. Y'all, he even put some of them in prison. Like, Joseph was really getting his get back on them. He really was. He was getting his get back on them. And just to shorten the story, how, like I said, they didn't know that that was their brother. And then Joseph couldn't contain it any longer because he really was going in on them. And he couldn't contain it any longer. And then he had to let them know, like, yeah, I'm Joseph, your brother, the one that you mistreated, the one that you sold into slavery. Like, I am him. And like the brothers, when they found that out, y'all, they were so scared because they knew, like, wait, he's in control. He's in control. So, oh my God, what are they going to do to us? And Joseph even told him, hey, don't fear. Don't fear. But that the Lord started to do a work into Joseph and started to open Joseph's eyes and see, like, no, what the enemy made for bad, I turned out to be for good. And what he ended up doing was bringing his brothers from where all the famine was. And he ended up moving his brothers and his father to Egypt. And they were, they were blessed. My takeaways and how this relates to steadfast faith. So Joseph received this dream at 17 years old. But his brothers did not bow to him until he was 39 years old. That's 22 years. So Joseph really had steadfast faith in the trials that Joseph went through. He did not complain. He did not say, all right, God, now, when this dream that you said coming to pass, because the situation that I'm in right now, it don't look like nobody about to be bowing to me. But Joseph had faith to know that if God gave me a dream, that dream was going to come to pass. And that is just encouraging. That's why I make it my business to research how long it took the promises to come to pass, because it strengthens your faith to know that if these people waited 22 years and I'm complaining over a year or 2 years, get a grip. Get a grip. So that was encouraging to me. Another thing that stood out to me was that I wasn't expecting to come for me was forgiveness. As I was reading the story, I was like, Joseph didn't complain at all, right? Joseph didn't complain about what his brothers done to him or none of that stuff. I see one instance, when he was talking to Pharaoh's officers, and he was just saying that he was treated unfairly. He did mention that, but he didn't complain. He didn't say that he was angry with his brothers. So I was thinking, oh, well, Joseph good. But it wasn't until Joseph was faced with the people who betrayed him that all that anger started to come out his heart. And he actually started to throw his weight around and his authority around with his brothers. But it wasn't until the Lord, opened his eyes to see that all that stuff was necessary. It was necessary that you went through all of this. And he ended up forgiving his brothers and ended up blessing his brothers. So that part just spoke so loudly to me. Encouraged by the story, because it just proves again that his word can't come back to him void. That if he promised a thing, that thing is going to come back to pass. So we must have steadfast faith.